Hey, what's up, dudes? So, I wanted to start the series on music theory, and I've been trying to think of the best way to start, and I really think that this is it. We start by looking at a piano and looking about how the notes are spread out along the piano. And it gives us a good graphical breakdown of the steps between each note. Now, the shortest distance between any two notes is a half step, and that would be the next adjacent note. So you might think that C to D is a half step because they're next to each other. But if you look closely, there's actually a note in between this note here. So really the next adjacent note to C isn't D, it's really C sharp or D flat. They're both correct names. So if we take a note and we sharp it, we raise it by a half step. And if we take a note and we flat it, we lower it by a half step. And some notes just naturally have this in between note. C to D naturally has this note in between. E to F doesn't. So if we were thinking in terms of the lettering, we know that we name the notes by alphabetic letters and A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But then when we get to G, we go back to A again. B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to the forever that way and forever this way. Both ways, we go to the furthest of human hearing, really, until you can't hear it any longer. So, the rule that you really should take away from this is that between any two notes, it tends to be a whole step where a half step and then another half step combined equals a whole step. Okay? On a guitar, that would be 2 frets. On a guitar, a half step would be 1 fret, the smallest interval between any two notes, a half step. So most notes, C to D, D to E, those are whole steps because we have this intermediary note. But some notes, like E to F, that interval, that's only a half step. And B to C is also a half step. So the rule would be between any two notes, it's a whole step, except E to F and B to C. Those are our exceptions. And it just repeats. You know, here we are again at B to C, E to F, and B and C would be right next to that. Okay? So those are our basic breakdown of the notes. So when we look at this note, we say, wow, this has just C, and this has just D and E and so forth. But this one has two, C sharp and D flat. So which one is it? And the answer, of course, is both. Just depends on the context. Sometimes C is already in use, so I can't use C sharp. I would have to use D flat, like if I was making like a C Phrygian scale. I want this half step interval, but I've already used C, so I have to cross that off my list of usable notes, and I put it here. One way we could do it is we could say C and then C sharp, and then we would have to natural the C again later, but that's too complicated. The better and the more correct approach is you use a note once, and then you manipulate the other notes to fill in the intervals that you need. All right. So let's not overthink it. What you should take away from this is that between any two notes is a whole step, except for E to F and except for B to C. Those are our half step exceptions. Now, if we look at I'm going to flip this over. I have a little, guitar neck here. We can take a look at this. We can see it's the same thing. Here's C. C to D is a whole step. Notice that there's a fret in between. Right, here's first fret, second fret, third fret. To go from C, which is on the first fret, to D, we have to go from 1 to 3. Well, what happened to 2? Well, that's the in-between note, like on our piano. Right? But if you notice, when we go from B to C, it's just 1 fret open to first fret. Or there's B to C again, just 1 fret. There's E to F, just 1 fret. B to C, 1 fret. B to C, 1 fret. E to F, 1 fret. But all the other ones, G to A, C to D, F to G, what's this, D to E, right? G to A to B, those are all whole steps. And you can see they write in the little in-between notes right here. And there's always something / something. It's always this note sharped first and this note flatted second. We can always go to C sharp or D flat. So that begs the question, well, what about on here? Is there such a thing as E sharp? Right? Could this also be called E sharp, and could this be called F flat? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. Sure. If it needs it, we use it. So if we need a B sharp, and we do sometimes, we would absolutely sharp that and call that B sharp. And the reason why is because we need C. We need that letter. So we can't just call it C. We have to call it B sharp. All right. The other thing you should know is that sometimes, and this gets a little rarer, but it's out there. It needs to be done sometimes. Is sometimes we will double sharp or double flat a note. And the first thing you say is, "Can you do that? Is that legal?" Yeah, actually, you can, and they do it quite a bit actually, if it's absolutely needed. So again, it would be something where we would need a note. Let's see, we're at F, and it was already like G sharp, and we need to get G. We need this note and this note, but we're already using G sharp. How could we do it? We would do like an F double sharp to get to this note. So we'll get into that more later, and you'll see why it has to be done. I think of it more like baseball, right? You can't have two men on the same base, right? You got to spread out. Spread it out. So you can't have two notes. Now, sometimes we will do that temporarily in music. You'll see that we'll sharp a note or flat a note as we're going along incidentally. But then we go back and we natural that again. Right? If it's in the same measure, we have to show that we've naturaled it. But if you just continue on through the music, it automatically just goes back to the original key signature. So that's where we're at. And just so I think what to take away is whole step, and then a half step, a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. That breakdown, right? WWH, WWWH. That sequence is huge. It's so prevalent in music. It's really ground zero for all of what we work with. And you can just see the breakdown right in the black keys because each one represents a whole step. So you can see it's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that breakdown, the sequence of the major scale, is that's where it all starts. And we tend to look at things all in the context. From that one scale, that C to shining C, right there, that one scale, we can derive all the modes and all kinds of exotic scales. And we can really, use this as our starting point, and everything else we make just gets compared to that. And it helps us really put it in context. All right. Well, that's it. That's my starter video. When we come back, what we will do is we will look at these notes on the staff, and we'll find out about middle C. And again, the keyboard, here's one good thing about the keyboard. On the keyboard, we pick a note, say that's that note, we'll call that middle C. This is the fourth, on the piano would be the fourth octave on a full-size piano, right in the middle of the keyboard. They would call that C4, but we'll call that middle C, right? We don't have context with this piece of paper, but let's just assume that that's middle C. One place on the keyboard, you can play middle C. On the guitar, that's middle C, and that's middle C, and that's middle C, and that's middle C, And if this paper went on down to the low E string for another octave, we would see another middle C. It's like literally 5 places you can play middle C on the guitar. There's 1 place on the piano. So that's why guitar players have it a little harder. It's both a curse and a blessing at the same time. On one hand, it gives us more ability to move things around and play things in patterns that are more comfortable with us. On the other hand, it can get a little confusing because when you see a middle C on a staff paper for piano, there's only 1 place you can play it. When you see a middle C on a guitar, on a staff paper and you're a guitar player, there's literally 5 different places you can play that. And what happens is you just pick, like 2 or 3 of your favorite, or you look around and you see the general context of it, and you can say, oh, well, if I need to go down, I should probably be in this area because I'm going to need to get to this note, and if I start too high, I won't be able to get there quickly enough, or the same, vice versa, I need to get to this higher note. So you know what, I'm going to play my middle C up a little bit higher on the neck, so that way I can very quickly move across and get up to some higher note. So these are the choices that guitar players have to make. Piano players don't really make that choice. There's only 1 place to play middle C, and that's it. There's 5 places on the guitar. So, all right, that's it. I'll be back soon, and we will take a closer look at these things, these notes on a staff paper. Rock on.